Now joined by Ron Hoon. How you doing?
Hi, Michael.
We don't get to do this too often, so I'm glad that
No, I
you're
know.
able to come on. I know.
It's nice that you're hanging out with folks in the morning.
Yeah.
In more of the Hooner hours.
Yes.
Correct.
I like the morning. I like
Yeah.
the morning. Well, the big talker last night at the RNC.
Right.
Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
A lot of people saying big snub.
I like the way you put it right here.
Yeah.
Epic snub.
So
I mean,
what are your thoughts? I want to get your thoughts here.
Okay, so I was, I hate to be a I told you so kind of guy,
Yeah.
but I was in the newsroom yesterday saying he's not going to endorse.
Yeah.
And I said, this speech, see Rick's over there right now. I think he probably remembers me saying this. This speech, he intends to be the kickoff to his 2020 campaign.
Yeah, I mean, he already pretty much launched the 2020 campaign right there, right?
Correct. But there are certain ways that you should handle it and that you shouldn't. So Sami always laughs because I have enough perspective, over the length of time for a quick Hooner history lesson. In 1976, Gerald Ford became the Republican nominee, but Ronald Reagan gave him a real run for his money. And yet there was unity between the two. You have when the race is over, when it's over, you got to be able to do your best to get on board. Do you think it was easy for Marco Rubio to tape that thing that he taped? No, but he did it for something bigger than himself and his personal feud with the man he said had the small hands.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, obviously Trump didn't take that too personally, little snub. And so he invited him to do it, and Rubio did it. And Scott Walker did it as well. I mean, it would have been interesting to see a few more of his opponents.
Yep.
But Rubio was a big get.
Yeah. Yep.
Not Walker, not so much. But still, the fact is, he did it. When the race is over, look, either if you just can't do it, if it's just the words cannot come out of your mouth, just step aside.
Yes.
Don't go into your guest's house.
Yes.
And throw cold water over everything.
I know. Earlier today, I made the analogy. This is like going to someone's birthday party and not talking to the birthday person.
Right. Or saying all bad things about them.
Yeah, right in front of them.
Or trying to, about the time they're going to blow out the candles, you stand up and make a 20-minute speech that's really not going anywhere.
Oh, that's what it was like. That's what it felt like, too.
Yeah.
And you could tell near the end when it was time, when the crowd was hoping, and they were hoping that he was going to say something positive about Donald Trump, and then
when they finally realized it,
they turned.
They turned on him fast. You know what? The first part of that speech was really good.
Yeah.
When he the way he opened up was such an emotional tone, talking about the little 9-year-old girl who lost her dad. Mm-hmm. You could see the tears in the eyes of the people on the convention floor. That place, you could have heard a pin drop.
Yeah.
People were...
They were for him. They were with him.
People were with him, and they were really willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. But here's the problem. Can you call up my Twitter page?
Yes.
Okay. Here's kind of, something I think, Michael, you'll find kind of interesting here. Because he did this. He certainly didn't do it to hurt himself or hurt his image. But I asked a simple poll question this morning. You'll have to cast a vote one way or the other just so we can see the results. But after the speech, did Ted Cruz help his chances or kill his chances to be the next GOP nominee? So go ahead and cast a vote.
So I'm gonna say kill his chances.
Okay. Now let's see how it
did it go through. Vote. Okay. 82% are with it.
82% say this was a big time miscalculation, a big time backfire.
Yeah.
Only 18% said it helped his chances. You know when I started to get my first glimpse that this was going to be not good for Ted Cruz was in the super early morning when I'm up kind of getting everything ready.
Sure.
I heard a soundbite, as we like to call it in the business, from a lady who was a Ted Cruz supporter. She came to the convention. She's big in Republican politics. I want to say she was a delegate from maybe South Dakota. And she said, I'm just so disappointed in it.
Yeah.
At this point, it is over. He needed to step up and be the bigger man.
Yeah.
And he didn't do it. And she said, you know what? Never again. for me and Ted Cruz.
See?
Never again. He lost me.
So she was part of that 82% that thinks
correct
killed the chances right there.
Correct. And so, I was thinking back on it, and there's so much that we will never know, but I think there are certain people who have the ear of Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
And I think those key people were telling him, don't do it. Don't endorse him. Go make your speech. Go, say what you need to say. Set yourself up, for the next one. But don't do it. On the one hand, it could have seemed not genuine on his part to do it. It really depended on the words he would have used if he had endorsed him. Sure. If he would have said, a lot of nasty things get said in politics. A lot of nasty things. And this was one of the hardest run races. But the race is over. And I'm one Republican who's here to tell you Hillary Clinton can't be, the next president, or however he wanted to put it. And Donald Trump is the choice. So we've got to be behind it.
That would have been perfect.
As simple as that. I mean, it doesn't have to be, this is the greatest man who's ever been in the business world or the political world. He didn't have to do that, but he could have simply stated it in a way that seemed factual and real.
Sure.
But he didn't.
No, and I'm hearing that there was rumblings though that Trump and his rest of his team knew that he wasn't going to be endorsed by. Why would you allow him still on the stage then? That's what I don't get. That
what was it? The Winston Churchill had a great quote where he said something. I'm paraphrasing here, but something to the effect that when you're at war, you give the enemy everything you've got, but in victory, you put it all aside and you become. I think the word he used was magnanimous.
Sure.
Where you basically extend the hand of help and friendship, if possible, to the vanquished.
Sure.
And so I think that's where Trump was coming from. I think he felt like, we invited him. I see here that he didn't endorse me.
Yeah.
But if I pull the plug on him now, think about it's all about the media reaction the next morning. If he were to pull the plug on him 90 minutes ahead of time, then that would have reflected badly on Trump.
Yes, that's all they would have been talking about.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And then Cruz would have come out with the speech and said, "Look, what was so wrong with this?" And everybody would have been on his side.
Yeah.
It's crazy how it all pans out. But I actually think that he got up on that stage thinking, "Okay, I'm not going to endorse him. I'll mention his name. Congratulations, Mr. Trump, for winning." And then I'm going to launch into what just sounded like honestly kind of in the last 10 minutes, just a sort of a random campaign speech.
Yeah.
So I don't think it helped him, and I think he thought he was going to help himself.
Absolutely.
Now, people can jump on Twitter. I know that's the way we get our feedback now. If people want to vote in my poll question, great.
Take a look.
We already got 250 votes, but if you want to tweet us your thoughts on this as well, on whether you think he helped himself or did he just last night pretty much ruin any chance he had to be the next nominee.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like he tried to launch his 2020 campaign right there, and then at the same time killed it.
Yeah. It does, Michael. It does kind of go back to. Oh, and by the way, anytime you want to talk football, I'm up for it.
All right.
But it does go back to a generation ago, maybe a generation and a half ago. And why? Why are our politicians so spiteful toward each other? Right?
Yes,
now Trump said plenty of things. Like the time he started one of the debates and Rand Paul was down barely hanging on the edge of the stage. He said, "Why is this guy even on the stage?"
Yeah.
And it came out of left field. But it was funny, you know. But I go back to Ronald Reagan and Gerald Ford. Ronald Reagan wanted to be president. He actually turned out to be a beloved president, a beloved leader, but in 1976, it just wasn't in the cards.
Yep.
And so he got on board as much as he could at the convention with Gerald Ford. 4 years later, this is where it gets really fascinating, and this is where it shows you how different things are now versus a generation ago. Because imagine Ted Cruz and Donald Trump doing this. Reagan becomes the nominee in 1980. Ford, it became obvious, I mean, Jimmy Carter was elected president in 1976 anyway. People weren't happy with Carter. It looked like he was not going to win. So the question was, who could Reagan get to be his vice presidential candidate? Now think how much one decision of a guy sitting in a hotel room changed the whole scope of world history, because he picked George H.W. Bush, which then led to George W. Bush eventually running for office, which then led to the Iraq War and everything that we've been dealing with.
It's a domino,
the fall of dictators and bad guys out, power vacuums in, and
ISIS
now we're dealing with ISIS.
Yep.
All of that hinged on Ronald Reagan in 1980 at that convention. You know who he wanted for his vice president?
No.
Gerald Ford.
Gerald Ford, wow.
The man who had been voted out of office by the American people, and who obviously took that hard anyway in 1976, and who was now being asked to now play second fiddle to his party's nominee. Ronald Reagan's star on the ascent, Gerald Ford's not so much, but he could be the statesman. And I remember the coverage that night, watching the convention, 1980, and they're saying Reagan has made the offer. Ford is agonizing over it in his hotel room. Will he, because it would be highly unusual to be a president, be voted out of office, come back 4 years later as a vice president. I don't think it's ever happened. And so I just remember thinking, how old would I have been back in 1980? I was just a young guy just starting in the business, right? In my early 20s, and watching and thinking, for the sake of the historical moment of it, I hope he does. In the end, he decided not to, but he wavered. And he really thought, I remember one of them saying, he felt like for the good of his country, he needed to do it. Well, why does it feel like politics is so petty now?
I know. It's too much.
What Ted Cruz last night, I mean, he thought he was doing it for the good of the country, but it came off simply as petty.
Yeah.
Some of the things that Donald Trump said in the past about Ted Cruz seemed petty.
Yes.
I don't know. It's too bad, because what ends up happening is people get their backs up, and not just within the Republican Party, but between Democrats and Republicans.
Too much
and then
headbutting.
nobody can get along, and nothing gets done, and it's just a big old mess in Washington now.
Now, how do you think tonight's going to go? So tonight's the final night of the RNC. We know, Donald Trump's going to be the big closing out speech, but I'm a little excited for Ivanka. For the daughter. She's introducing him, and I think that's going to be great.
I thought to myself, this is probably not the right phrase to use, that she's going to steal the show, because Trump has a commanding presence on the stage.
Yes.
But she will come pretty close to stealing the show.
She,
if she wanted a political future, she seems to carry a lot of the same drive and determination that her father does, but has so much more of a broader appeal.
Yes.
Because I don't think you would hear her saying some of the things that you heard her dad saying.
Yeah.
I was talking to people in the studio earlier today. If Donald Trump had taken 2 or 3 things that he said and never said them, he could be riding a groundswell right now. There are just going to be a lot of people who will not get on board with him, no matter what.
Yep.
Because of the way he portrayed. A lot of people feel that we are not serious about our borders, and that a lot of people here in Arizona think it's really a joke.
Yeah, sure.
To be saying the borders have never been more secure, and then you hear reports of a guy, who's snuck across the border 10 times, that kind of thing. So there's no arguing that we have an issue with illegal immigration. But when Trump took it to the next step and said they're sending us their murderers and their rapists, then that is so inflammatory that some people will never get on board,
Absolutely.
Another thing, the stuff he said about Megyn Kelly.
I know.
There are going to be women who vote for Hillary Clinton and against Donald Trump because specifically of how nasty he was toward Megyn Kelly in his remarks the next day. You take a couple of those things back, right? And he could be riding a wave right now that is not, he's still down by about 2 points. He could be 10 points up on Hillary Clinton because she's suffering too.
Absolutely. But to his credit though, when you look back at it the past year, of
Yes.
all the things he says,
Yeah.
there was times where when he would say a comment, and
Yeah.
I was like, okay,
Yeah.
that's going to derail him.
Yep.
And it never did.
It never did, that's
either
true.
the McCain comment about
I know.
the, you know,
Right.
not being a hero.
Right.
I thought, or the Muslim comments.
Yep,
I mean,
right.
I
Yeah,
thought for
right.
sure, like, something's going to get derailed, and it never did.
It never does. Now, for people who are really paying attention to this convention, and you really had to be, did you know that 2 nights ago, the benediction, the closing prayer for the convention, night before last, was given by a Muslim cleric?
Wow.
How about that?
Yeah.
Right?
So he's trying to...
Correct.
Unity, yeah.
And last night, you know, it was either going to be Pence or Cruz that got all the play.
Yeah.
And it was Cruz.
Yes.
And so Pence is talked about second. I'll tell you the guy they should be talking about is the state senator from Kentucky. I believe his name was Ralph Alvarado, who I said to some people who agreed with me today in the newsroom, keep that name in mind. I don't know if
Okay.
you saw that speech.
No,
It
I
was
did not
earlier
see.
on.
No, I did not see
But
that one.
Somehow we've got some of that, right?
Yeah,
Maybe
we-
you could play some of
I
it
will,
later
yeah.
for people who missed it. I said that man could very well be our first Hispanic president. He was charismatic. He was powerful. His arguments seemed well reasoned. He had total command of the stage. He's a physician from Kentucky who, if I have it right, had to close his office. We've heard of this.
Yes.
Because of the rules and restrictions of
Obamacare.
Obamacare.
Yeah.
So he had to close it down and decided to get into politics as a result. And a guy like him could be building within the Hispanic community, could be building so much excitement for Donald Trump right now that some people are just not going to get on board with Trump.
That's
They're
true.
just not going to in all different kinds of communities. So anyway, I actually think, and they say this is Donald's convention. He's
Yes.
deciding every single speaker, and he's deciding on the placement.
That's
who
true.
goes first, who goes second, who goes last. He's deciding on all of that.
And
kind of thing.
speaking of speakers, I just saw a note here from one of our producers. Sheriff Joe just tweeted out, I will have the honor of speaking tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, shortly before Donald Trump.
Oh, wow.
So he's
okay.
going to be on the primetime stage.
There you go. All right,
Ooh.
so that'll be 5 o'clock our time, and
Yes.
that's when everybody's been sitting down to kind of watch. So that's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, he was one of the earliest to
He
be
really
on
was.
board.
He really
To
was.
be on board. So
Very
yeah.
interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know you'll be watching, and
Yeah, that's for sure.
and then you'll have a nice maybe recap with Samia tomorrow and see
Yeah,
how.
sure. Was she working the afternoons today?
Yeah, she's working the afternoon.
You
We-
guys, the way you flip-flop
I know.
schedules, I can't keep up.
I know. Well, it was great seeing you. And folks, if you haven't already done so, now would be the time to get in on Ron's poll here.
Yep. So I'm Ron Hoon Fox 10 on Instagram. I'm Hooner Fox 10
There we go.
for our worldwide audience. That's my nickname.
So keep following and take part of this poll, and we'll see if those numbers will change at all. You got already, 253 votes on there,
Yeah.
22 hours left to go.
Hey, when you're ready to do, next time you're in the morning and you're ready to preview the Cardinal season, let's talk.
Let's do it, because that is right around the corner.
I just bought my first NFL preview magazine. I know you do this
yeah,
too.
yeah,
I know you go to the
power
newsstands.
rankings and everything.
And,
They're fun, yeah.
And the one I bought, which I think was Athlon, says, don't buy into the hype on the Seahawks this year. The Cardinals are still going to win the NFC West.
Nice. I hope they do. It was
I
a
do
fun
too.
season last year. It'll be good this
Oh,
year.
it's so great.
Well, it was great seeing you, Ron. I know you
Okay.
got a meeting to go to in a little bit.
Yep. Thanks,
But thank
Michael.
you. Yep.
Okay.
Take care.
Good job.